Hi, I'm Paul Carroll. I'm the editor-in-chief at Insurance Leadership, and I am delighted to be here today with three folks so that we can talk about the state of Insurtech. It's a power-packed group. Rob Bauer is in charge of product innovation and technology at Boltech. Jason Ralph is a partner at McKinsey, and David Atkinson is the VP of data and transformation strategy at Sun Life. So I hope we'll get to a lot here in the next 45 minutes or so. It seems to me that we're at a really interesting spot in terms of Insurtech and more broadly innovation in insurance. And I got involved with insurance about 10 years ago, and you sort of were worried that Amazon was going to climb out from under the bed at night and grab everything, or Google was going to take over, or who knew what was going to happen. But there were all sorts of talks about new business models. And some of them happened, some of them didn't. But one of the things about the way we all seem to track progress is stock price. And to the extent that some of those companies went public and got vaunted stock prices, those have pretty much disappeared. So it seems to me that we're in kind of a gloom and doom stage in terms of Insurtech in particular, but innovation more broadly in insurance. And I think that's wrong. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been following technology for going on 35 years now, since I covered it for the Wall Street Journal. And it seems to me that we're just in sort of a trough, and that things are now forming for a new wave of innovation. And we'll talk about that today. Jason, I thought maybe I'd turn to you first. It's not often I get to interview someone with a PhD in history, let alone from one of my alma maters, Northwestern. So I thought I'd ask you to put things in a little historical perspective here, both based on your academic work and obviously what you do at McKinsey. I hope you won't say I'm flat wrong, but feel free to jump in and put it in whatever perspective you think is appropriate.
Thank you, Paul. Insurance is rarely thought of as a bastion of innovation. So, we can look at we can't look at metrics like R&D spend or patents as a good measure of innovation in the industry. And so as a result, I think often we will look at something like the decline in Insurtech valuations that have come down in many cases 90+% from all-time highs, and sort of chalk the whole thing up as a failed experiment. But I don't think that's reflective or a fair reflection of the progress that the industry really has made in innovation. And if you just think about commercial insurance as one example, every time we've seen risks that have been excluded from general liability, for example, they give rise to entirely new markets. So think about cyber as one example of that. I think the challenge has been that while we've seen pockets of innovation, very few carriers have been able to embed it in their organizational DNA. We've been attracted to the potential of digital, but we've largely digitized the existing analog processes. We haven't truly transformed them. And we see this in the data. So while we've seen digital application submission in life insurance, for example, increase from 52 to 76% from 2019 to 2022, cycle times haven't changed. And in many cases, they've actually gone up. So I think one of the questions as an industry is how can we sort of rewire the organization to move from innovative point solutions to something that more fundamentally transforms the business model?
So, Rob, what's your perspective? You not only come from Boltech, but from that semi-foreign area we know as San Francisco and Silicon Valley. How would you put where we are in terms of innovation?
I speak Silicon Valley, so that foreign land is quite familiar to me. I was planted here in Silicon Valley, where I am now, by AIG about 10 years ago to open AIG's front door to Silicon Valley. It was before the words fintech or insurtech were even known. It was just tech. And my mission then, which continues in some ways now at Boltech, I call it same mission, different seat. Continued also at my stop at Marsh in between, where I helped to build the sharing economy and mobility practice group. So I guess I've seen this from a large carrier standpoint. I've seen it from an Insurtech. I've seen it from an investor standpoint, from an operator standpoint. And some of the similarities are these. One, a quest for underwriting relevant information. So what is the signal within the noise of all the ways that the world is now is now connected? So whether it's water leak sensors being able to usage-based rate a homeowner's insurance product, whether it is data from drivers that are available now to auto and fleet underwriters to use that used to be available only from an OBD2 port dongle, then it was available through a mobile phone, then it was available through some type of chip that's in a vehicle, and now it's available directly from a vehicle. All of this information are gifts to underwriters. They're gifts to actuaries. It's more things are possible to be measured with more precisely and in more ways. Another name for all that is actuarial science. And so I think that as more technology is more connected in the world, that's just the start of the journey. That's not the end of it. Then you get into the ways that different insurers are communicating with their agents and with their brokers, and you get into whole area of the technology infrastructure that is being upgraded and updated. There are many improvements that are being made in those areas. Let's talk about some specifics during this panel here. But I also think I don't want to underrate the current incumbents as well. If one thing has happened over the first 2.5 waves, and we can talk about how we would consider those waves of Insurtech, it's that more people are paying attention in real ways at many of the incumbents, and we're lucky to serve a bunch of those here at Bolt Tech, and we'll get into some of those examples.
So, David, how does the world look from Sun Life's perspective?
Yeah, I agree with Rob. There's lots of opportunities where technology and capabilities are really going to help back office processes, being more efficient, more effective. I think there's a huge opportunity as well in terms of the client experience and how do we make an impact for our clients at the front end of our business as well. How do we make it easier to do business with us? How do we meet the clients where they are? And I think, the interesting part is that clients' expectations are not being set by our direct competitors or financial services. It's being set by their interactions with companies that are in completely different businesses as well. So expectations of clients are continuing to evolve and change. And I'm actually very bullish in terms of the technology and capabilities such as generative AI and the impact that they can make, not only on our bottom line productivity numbers, but also on delivering a much better, more engaging and impactful client experience as well.
So I think that's a great start. In my experience, because I speak a little Silicon Valley as well, Rob, having lived there and worked there with the Wall Street Journal, people tend to get enamored of the technologies and think about, where we can go. So I was around for the first wave of virtual reality in the late 80s and early 90s, and then the second wave in the early 2010s, and now we're in the third wave. And in a lot of cases, it's sort of a technology in search of a problem. So what I'm hoping we can do is tee up some of the business issues as opposed to the technology possibilities. We'll get to those a little bit. But, Rob, in terms of where you sit, what are the big 2 or 3 business issues you see that can be addressed through innovation here over the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Technology in search, which sometimes manifests itself as a solution in search of a problem, whereas where we like to start is the problem in search of the solution is definitely the right way to approach it. And I think that there's a lot of buzz around AI right now. But simply put, the way we think about it, AI powers humans, and it shouldn't be underhyped. So a bunch of technology came before AI. But if we focus on the ends of what the AI is helping us trying to achieve instead of the means, I think it's instructive for us. So for example, cars didn't help people run faster, but they allowed us to get more quickly from home to work, for example. Fitness apps didn't help you become thinner, but it helps you understand a lot more about the world and how your body responds to the world in different ways. So it helps you track your workouts and run farther and eat smarter. Water leak sensors in homes, they have to be installed, they have to be turned on, they have to be continuously monitored in order to attack and get to the number one most costly peril after natural catastrophes. And so AI really has the power to help insurers and policyholders be on the same side, but we really need to understand what part of the protection gap are we hoping to improve here. And I think that starting with the ends and not the means is really going to help us. Couldn't agree more with what you said.
So David, what would be your top 2 or 3?
Yeah, it's similar to Rob. I think this idea of starting with the client and working backwards, to borrow a phrase from AWS's process, is really where we're focusing, in innovation and improvements. If you ask me, I think, there's a huge white space for us to lead into. Most people, when they interact with their insurer, are dealing on an intermittent basis with complex tasks that are very personal in nature. And so if you think about, what that experience is like from a client's perspective, and I'm sure we all have had that experience, what you want and what the white space is how do you make that personal? How do you know the client? How do you know me as an individual? How do you predict and have an idea for what am I calling about? Why am I interacting with you? What are my needs? Help me understand my needs and help service those. And then proactive, how can we make it easy for our clients? How can we do it for them where we can? And I think that's sort of the opportunity, the white space that we can lead into with innovation. I think, those concepts are not necessarily new from an insurance perspective. If you think about high net worth individuals, they've been getting this type of white glove service, the personal, predictive, and proactive for many years. I think the opportunity from a technology perspective and things like generative AI unlock is the ability to bring that white glove service of personal, predictive, and proactive experience to an average client. How do we know them, who they are, help them understand what they need, and then help connect them to the products and services that best meet where they are in their lives. So that's where I see innovation and the technology that's coming to market really helping drive and make an impact for our clients.
So Jason, you have the whole range of the industry. You don't have to just think about one company. What would be the top 2 or 3 that you're seeing that you're helping your clients with?
Rob and David mentioned, I think, a lot of them. There's always 3 that come to mind for me, and really working backward from where are we seeing the symptoms of some of the challenges in customer experience and customer engagement, as Rob and David had mentioned. So one is really around customer engagement and agent productivity. On average, an insurer has about 2 touch points per year with their insured, and it's usually when they call in to make a payment or maybe change their address. And how can we shift that model fundamentally to deliver more engagement with our customers, help our agents engage with them more, and shifting from sort of a product to more of a solution type mindset. The second is reducing friction in the system. So productivity is a huge element of this. And over the past 20 years, as we've sort of looked at the industry, SG&A expenses as a share of revenues have increased 20% in life insurance relative to, and 4% in P&C, while other industries like automotive or telecommunications or asset management have been able to reduce those. And it's not just about productivity as a financial measure, but as a measure of friction. So you see that sort of lack of productivity come back into the customer experience and cycle times and NIGO rates I've mentioned before. And the last is around technology modernization. So in many cases, we may have great ideas and shiny objects as sort of tools in our toolkit, but we don't have the foundational capabilities and the data and the systems to sort of support that art of the possible. And in order to get there, then it takes us, a year, 2 years to bring an innovation to market. And that cycle time just doesn't cut it anymore as you look at sort of the other industries that we're competing with.
So I want to dive into one of those a little bit. When you talk about touch points, that's one that I hear people talk about a lot, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can see all sorts of studies showing that the more often a company touches its customer, the more loyal the customer is, and so forth. But I also react a little bit. I remember back in the probably early 90s when people were starting to talk about how maybe it was the mid 90s. In any case, people were talking about how with cell phones, you could realize, oh, I'm walking by a Starbucks, and you could ping me and say, here's a deal on a latte. And I thought, you better not. Leave me alone. If I'm walking down the street, just leave me alone. So I think there has to be some value that's added. And I guess the Starbucks would be saying they're offering me $1 off a latte or something like that. But how do you make these sorts of interactions valuable so it's not just me pestering a potential client?
One word, I'll go first if that's okay, and
Sure.
to just pick up on what Jason said, which is context. So how does the mosquito not buzz in your ear? It needs to be relevant. How does there was a TV commercial I know that GE was proud of that I liked around Knight Rider, which was the car telling you things that were relevant at the right time. But their point was, what good is all of this data that is saying things to you that is effectively noise if it doesn't have anything meaningful to say? And so combining signal, which needs to first be understood, quantified, and found from an underwriter standpoint within the data to help risk select, price, and underwrite, is the first step. The second step is putting it into context. And we started with history, so I'll quote Professor Thaler from University of Chicago that wrote a whole book on nudges and many white papers about this as well. The behavioral nudges that insurance has the power to provide, if it's listening the right way, if the technology is set up the right way, and if it is offering insights and behavioral nudges to customers at the point of need, not pushing them at the point of sale, is magic. And I know that there is some data that are some of our friends at Toyota and Arity and Allstate and others have been able to show in the mobility space. We're actually finding some of that in the homeowner space as well, which is offering and nudging through nudges, through pricing nudges, whether it's discounts or incentives to homeowners to be able to protect their homes using latest and greatest technology. I know that there are life insurers that are asking themselves, well, if I know from fitness tracking apps and fitness tracking hardware that this potential customer has run a mile consistently under 8 minutes, 3 times a week, every week for the last 3 months, do I need a professional medical report for them? Or is that data that's actuarially sound, auditable, and efficient telling me something more such that I can adjust the mortality tables and be able to offer a different offering? So those are the types of things that are being used now today. And I think it's very relevant to your question there, Paul.
Yeah, if I could just add on, like I think that's right on. I think what's important for us at Sun Life is looking for wins for our clients. How can we make an impact and help them, and look for a win-win where it's also good for Sun Life, and starting with the client needs and benefits first. So a good example is in health and disability for us. If we can help an individual who's off on a leave of absence for a health-related issue, if we can help connect them, identify and connect them with resources, help them navigate the healthcare system, or to different capabilities to help them get better faster, different treatments and so forth, that's good for them. That helps them get back to work quicker, helps them get healthier quicker. It's good for the plan sponsor, who's also paying and having the employee off, which isn't good. It's good for Sun Life, helping get them back to work and off of the long-term disability. It's good for our public healthcare system and getting the resources back available. So it's kind of a multi-win opportunity, and those are really the ones that I think are beneficial to our clients. If you start there, those are the opportunities that we really lean into. I think the constant bombardment of sales, I think, wears pretty thin on people. And so being really mindful about and intentional about where and how we show up with our clients, and it's obviously in their interest, I think is the winning formula for us.
There has to be a value exchange, right? I think so. And we have to actually realize that value exchange. It's not enough for us to say we want more than 2 touch points with our insureds. We have to say, why would they want more than 2 touch points with us? And how can we embed that in our product, in our service model in a way that they see real tangible benefit from it, as do we, to your point, David.
Yeah.
And I confess I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. I'm probably not a great consumer. I push back a little bit, maybe because I know a little bit about business. I'll just tee up one other point that we probably don't have time to explore, but that you guys touch on that I think is really important, which is operational efficiency. And Jason, you were talking before about some of the stats where if you look at digitization, things have improved, but if you look at processing times, they haven't. Somebody used a term with me the other day that I liked a lot. He said, yeah, we've gotten rid of the paper, but now we have digital paper. So we have PDFs, we have spreadsheets, we have, whatever that are in electronic form, but you still have to spend a lot of time working your way through them to get the data that you need for the underwriting and the claims and all that sort of stuff. So to keep us moving along, you guys have started to move into an area that's near and dear to my heart, which is this idea of predict and prevent. When I got started with insurance 10 plus years ago, the first talk I gave said, he who sells the least insurance wins. Nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to buy insurance, but they do want to have protection. They want to have peace of mind. They want to have all these other things that the insurance industry can provide. And it always seemed to me that there should be some way for insurers increasingly to take the massive amounts of data and the huge amounts of understanding they have and apply them so that I don't have that accident or whatever. Rob, maybe I'll start with you because you had teed this up before with the water sensors, but how much do you think we have moved toward a predict and prevent model, and how much do you think we can?
We can't get there fast enough is my answer. Customers are not buying that piece of paper. They're not buying that renewal. Jason, you mentioned the once or twice that customers interact with their insurers, and that's if everything's going well. If everything's not going well, there are claims, and we haven't really talked about that here yet, and there's a lot of wood to chop in that forest. So big shout out to friends at Allianz who have figured out ways to not just give auto customers a rental car reimbursement when their car breaks down, but rather to give them an Uber credit. Why? Because they weren't starting their day trying to have a vehicle that they could rent for the rest of the week. They were trying to get to the airport, for example, when that flat tire happened. And so instead of making the claim, introducing more friction into the claim, they're thinking about ways to work with their partners, because they're also providing some underwriting support and some capacity for Uber in ways that their partners are also seeing some success in this as well. So that's a really kind of great and advanced way to think about the ends, not just the means. We have a company at BoltTech in our universe called Verd. Verd is a homeowners company in Florida, and the water leak discounts that the customers of Verd have access to are only available if these water leak sensors are unpackaged, installed, self-installed. They're just little pucks, self-installed, turned on, and that data is able to flow to the customer and to the insurance company at the same time. So the insurance company becomes on the same side as the customer when and if there is a claim, or if there is a water sensor alert, which oftentimes are not claims. So also helps to give customers peace of mind and something that they were looking for that is not just a policy, for example, which is real-time benefit of knowing that my home is safe. By the way, those are the customers we love, or any insurer would love, because they're increasing the care that they take of their most prized possession. Or for many individuals, the most expensive purchase that they'll ever make in their life. And so it's those types of examples that are alive and well today. And so, but they are just examples, Paul. So I meet you there. I believe, frankly, we couldn't get there fast enough, and we're on a mission to increase those examples.
And when you talk about the pucks, there was a company I talked to a few years ago called Notion, now owned by Comcast, that does that sort of thing. And they found that the biggest use that they had was people would set up a sensor, because this isn't exactly the puck, but a sensor on the front door. And they just wanted to know at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that their kid was home from school. And that was a way that they touch people, completely unexpected.
That's right.
So David, where does predict and prevent fit into your universe?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, there's two speed limiters in my mind here. And I think, it's definitely a place we're heading in a direction. The speed limiters, though, are sort of twofold. The first is data. Life insurance is a very long tail business. We have clients who've been around for 50 years as part of our system. And those systems are diverse in terms of age. The data's kind of in different silos and pockets. So being able to pull together data from within our walls that clients have given us takes some time and energy. We're making great progress on this, but being able to generate insights from multiple diverse systems and it's a task. And so that there's a lot of work going on there. And I know many other carriers are going through the same process, but there is value there in helping to create better client experiences and meet the clients where they are. The second speed limiter in my mind is, and something you've touched on, is where does a client benefit and where is it viewed as creepy, where the carrier knows a lot about me and is maybe doing too much? Where is that line? I think that's a line that nobody has a great sense for yet, and we're sort of feeling our way towards. And I think the door sensor is kind of an interesting one. I know my auto carrier has offered to put a tracker on my car to see how my driving techniques are. My gut tells me, man, are they watching me or do I trust them? And so it's this level of trust, which I think has to be built as well. Trust is built in drips and lost in buckets. So the ability versus the intent versus the desire from the client, I think, is another thing which really needs to be slowly moved towards. And we have to be willing to sort of retract from that if it gets too creepy or if clients don't want that as well.
Yeah, no, the sensors have to be right. You remind me of a time a few years ago when I had a speaking gig in Zurich, and somebody there convinced me that I had to go to Auschwitz, which is actually quite a drive from Zurich, but I decided I was going to go visit Auschwitz. That meant driving all through the Czech Republic in a car that had all the fancy new sensors and was going to lane correct. The problem was they had construction basically all across at all the exits on the freeway going through the Czech Republic. And my car kept trying to steer me into the concrete. So I knew that about every 15 minutes, I'd have to fight the car and keep it from causing an accident for me. So anyway, that's there are false positives. There are things that have to be done right. Jason, from where you sit, how broadly do you think we can get toward predict and prevent quickly?
Well, I think one of the striking things that David's highlighted in both of the two rate limiters that he was talking about is, in many cases, it's not actually a technology problem, it's a human problem. So if I think about those rate limiters, one, we need to actually get customers to adopt and put in place whatever the sensors are, tools are, and see value from it, coming back to kind of our value exchange discussion before. We have telematic solutions. The technology is there to be able to monitor driver behavior and where their eyes are. But again, am I going to put that in my car? What's the benefit that I see from that problem? And then the other, I know, David, you mentioned data. Well, it's also an organizational problem, not just a data problem, right? We have great insights in pockets of the organization, but we can't necessarily pull them together to reach a level of confidence that allows us to place a long-term forward-looking bet on the risk that we take on. And so how can we build some of those feedback loops in the organization where we can take the data and insights from servicing or from claims or from our telematics and integrate them with actuarial and distribution and marketing and reach a level of confidence that allows us to really take action and make those kind of long-term bets to really adjust pricing. Because until we do that, you're not going to see that value exchange that'll help drive adoption. So in addition to some of the technology challenges, it's still very much a human problem, both I think for us in the industry and for our customers.
Jason, I love your point of value exchange. If I could just jump in and just compliment you and underscore that for a moment. But I actually don't think we give ourselves enough credit as a society for coming as far as we have. So just a couple of examples that I think about often. You know, if you at one point would go to a kind of a crowded room and say, "Please, would you give me your location data on your phone?" You'd hear crickets. And yet, if you say, "Please, if you give me your location data such that I can send the taxi to you on that street corner exactly where you are," guess what? We've all do that. Or if we say, for example, "Please, could you connect your wallet to your taxi?" It's hear crickets. But if I could, but how many of us do that on a regular basis now? Because when we step out of the Uber or the Lyft or the Grab, we now don't have to take out our wallet anymore. And so we've actually come quite a long way given the technologies that we have and given the tools that we have. And so I don't count my fellow man and womankind lightly, but when it comes to where we're going in the future, I believe that more people, especially younger generations, are going to continue to say yes to the different value exchanges when they're presented with that. And I think that insurers that are listening for it, and the others in the value chain, Insurtechs and the technology players, if you're listening for it in the right way, I think you'll go right along with society.
Yeah, if you tell me a storm's coming and I ought to get my car inside so it's not pelted by hail or whatever, I'm grateful for that sort of thing. And I think that's the kind of thing that, as you say, we can increasingly do. So you've sort of teed up the fun stuff, the sexy stuff, the technology, right? So we have to wrestle with these business problems. I would say actually with predict and prevent, we not only have the sort of business issues, but in some ways we have a new business model we have to come up with, because insurers know how to sell policies and handle claims and so forth. But selling protection for things that don't happen is a different sort of animal. But anyway, to the technology, we have mentioned generative AI a bit. And maybe that's the one we ought to focus on. But I'll just, in general, toss out a question, say to start with you, David, on what technologies you're exploring, just because you think they might lead you someplace interesting, even if you don't have an exact fit in mind at the moment for a business problem.
Yeah, I think we do try and start with a business problem, although not always, especially with new technologies such as generative AI. Although we are now at we've taken the pivot where we're starting with real problems and finding solutions, not solutions looking for problems. So I don't want to. I think Rob, you made the point about is generative AI overhyped? I think it is, but I think it's also real. Like there's something there. It's almost hard to overhype, because I think it's going to be so transformative and such a big opportunity to change so many parts of our business, so many parts of the value stream, so many parts of our client interactions and their ability to impact the client. I think it'd be hard to understate it as well, which is kind of an interesting position to be in when it comes to something as hyped as generative AI. And I view it in sort of two streams. I think the near-term stream is really going to be around productivity opportunities. How do we improve underwriting? How do we take paper out of systems? How do we better bring information together to generate insights? How do we remove some of the mundane tasks that happen across our business? I think that there's a huge opportunity for productivity lifts in the short term. In the medium term, and I actually don't think it's that far out, I think there's opportunities for us to differentiate and create new client experiences, whether it's new products or new channels or new capabilities or new points of interactions for our clients. I think that that's not too far around the corner. And I think that generative AI is really, it's not the silver bullet, but I think it accelerates a lot of capabilities, which previously were either cost prohibitive or just a little bit out of reach. So very, very bullish on the future when it comes to that type of technology.
So Jason, how about you?
I think you could think about Gen AI as maybe the greatest thing to ever happen to traditional AI, right? Because I think it starts to inspire and kind of spark the imagination of what's possible. And as we worked with carriers to develop and put into practice their Gen AI strategy or use cases, it really is maybe a starting point for thinking more holistically about like how can we kind of transform that end-to-end right journey or system. And then the actual solution itself is almost always going to be some combination of newer technologies like Gen AI for concision or content creation or coding and software, right? Together with more familiar solutions, automation, streamlining the digital user experience, straight up process redesign. I do think that as we think about sort of some of the new technologies we can be putting in place, the other way to think about it is where do I have or where could I develop a privileged perspective of my customer, insights that'll be hard for others to replicate. And then how can I use some of these tools, whether it's digital platforms and aggregators or Gen AI, to be able to engage customers in new ways, or we've talked about telematics or sort of IoT and connected devices, to be able to build on that advantage.
So I'm a huge fan of that idea of privileged insights, partly because it seems to form a virtuous circle. So if I do something, you give me an insight, I serve you better, you let me learn more, I do better, and so forth, and you keep going from there. And that's a real competitive note. I mean, to your point about generative AI, I recently read a really interesting book called The Dream Machine, mostly about J.K.R. Licklider, who did a lot to lay the basis for the personal computer and so forth. And you can actually trace the roots of AI back at least 100 years to some really smart stuff people were doing. The idea really got formed in the 50s. But as somebody put it to me the other day, AI no longer just has a brain, it also has a mouth. And in fact, if you look at an announcement the other day about ChatGPT, it also now has a memory in some cases. It gets a little scary, but it's really adding capabilities. So that's my 2 cents. Rob, how about you?
When AI has feelings, we know we've gotten there, and I think that's coming soon. I feel like we've hit AI quite hard in the panel. So and my perspective on it, just underscored, is that we actually cannot underhype it or overhype it. Pardon me. We cannot discount its power. I think we all agree that it has more than we know. So I'm going to go somewhere else to kind of end and answer you, just to add to what everyone's perspective. Another technology that we are listening closely to is batteries and electrification. So more things are battery powered in our lives than ever before, and those will continue. More batteries in more things, bigger batteries in bigger things, equals more costly batteries in bigger things, which equal more of the physical damage and potentially liability cost of the insurance solution. And so we are in touch with battery management systems and battery manufacturers to understand how they fix themselves and how they can change the dynamics that they operate in at a cell level, such that they can make the thing that they're powering act and react differently. So, for example, if I just bought a vehicle that comes with a 100,000-mile warranty, do we have enough cars or vehicles, batteries in electric vehicles actually to understand whether those batteries can meet that warranty, for example? There are many other examples that we have. Bolttech provides device protection, and we're effectively Samsung Care in several markets in the world right now. And so the replenishment and refurbishment of batteries is something that we're very familiar with. And we also know that the same technology that is on a smaller scale is also now being used on a larger scale as well, with OEMs and with large vehicles, soon to be homes as well, with battery packs on walls as well. And so we can't do our job well if we're not connected to and thinking about the next thing that we need to help insurers insure. We are technology that helps insurers listen for underwriting signal that is relevant. So we mentioned water leak sensors. We also mentioned behavioral heuristics with usage-based auto. Batteries are a large part of our future, and so we're drilling deep and listening very closely there.
That's one of the things that I certainly didn't understand before I got involved with insurance, and think people don't understand. And that's that insurance is seen as this slow, boring industry, you know, guys with green eye shades and actuaries, actuarial tables and all that sort of stuff. But no innovation happens without insurance, right? I mean, people are doing fabulous stuff. Batteries are fascinating things, and the progress that's being made is phenomenal. But until you figure out how to insure that battery in case it, you know, blows up or burns a home down or whatever, you can't really have that progress with the batteries. You know, you look at some of these offshore wind farms that people are trying to build. Well, holy smokes, are those complicated? And you can't do them until you figure out how to insure them. So I wish, you know, putting on my hat and waving my pom poms and so forth here, I wish people would understand more that basically anything that happens in terms of innovation has to have some really smart people figuring out how to insure it at the same time that the technology is being deployed. So unfortunately, we're at the end of time. I'm just kind of getting warmed up. I figure we could, you know, keep doing this for a while. But I'll just ask for summary thoughts, maybe starting with you, Jason.
Sure. So, you know, I think one of the questions might be sort of, what do we do next? I think we've talked to kind of a very high level of, you know, what are some of the themes across the industry, but maybe more individually, what do we do? And we recently published an article on, you know, what are the steps that individuals and organizations can take to increase sort of their innovation quotient for the organization. And we covered a lot of these in the conversation today. So kind of the shift from focus on products and technology to solutions when we're thinking about kind of predict and prevent. I might just highlight sort of three others. One is, how can we make innovation a process, not a project in our organization? Too often, we're still funding it as kind of a one-off project, and that's just not how innovation works, and that's not how innovation works in other industries. The second is, how can we develop distinct pathways for different types of innovation? We have to treat a moonshot differently from a modification, and both can be really valuable sources of innovation for the industry, but we just need distinct pathways for placing those bets. And the third, we've hit on a few times today, but like, how can you pull together a cross-functional group across the organization that can look at things more holistically from different angles to really kind of rewire the organization with a focus on the biggest customer and business problems, not the solution that I happen to have in my area?
That's great. I confess I speak a little consultant speak as well, having left the Wall Street Journal to be a consultant, and everything you said just sounds spot on to me. David, how about you? How would you summarize? What should people do tomorrow after hearing this discussion today?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Jason's points on the key ingredients for innovation. Maybe I'll take a slightly different tack and talk about some of the underlying capabilities that need to go along with that innovation. And, you know, first and foremost, I think data quality is super important to being able to innovate. If you don't understand and are able to wrangle your data and trust your data that you have, and I like the privileged insight conversation, you're not going to get very far. So data quality, as unsexy as it is still super critical, especially as we get into generative AI. Data literacy, I think, is another skill set which enterprises are going to have to really democratize across their business. Do you understand how to work with data, how to use data, what it means, especially as we get more into AI and models and so forth? If you can't interpret the output and you just blindly trust the machine, you might be in for some big trouble. And third, I think, is really understanding things like generative AI are going to change just about everybody's jobs. And how do you prepare for the skills and the needs of skills that will evolve with that? And a good example is, I think you'll see a deprioritization on, you know, technical skills and knowledge-based skills, and more focus on things like empathy and common sense. Can you connect with people? Will be a skill which will become higher priority as generative AI is able to sift through large amounts of knowledge and makes technology easier to deploy. So I think that'll be another preparation a lot of people will have to focus on with the coming innovation cycle driven by generative AI.
Couldn't agree more. We're in favor of liberal arts majors, right? Rob, how about you? I'll give you the
Yeah,
final
maybe
word.
I'll just wrap with a couple of problems that we're passionate about solving and things that I keep one eye awake, one eye open at night for. So we need more non-standard auto carriers to say yes to more drivers. We need more homeowners insurers to say yes to more homes that could be seen as victims of wildfire and natural catastrophe, but if looked at in a different way and protected with different technology, maybe there's a yes for the right price at the right moment, for example. We need more electric vehicle insurance capacity. Everyone agrees that we want a greener or more kind of a better future tomorrow, and yet insurance commissioners haven't increased rates for a while. And so there are these very complicated puzzles that really need solving. And technology, we've talked about a lot of ways that technology is the path to solve these things. So at Bolt Tech, and I think many other organizations, what we really look to is to close the protection gap. Swiss Re recalculates what the protection gap is every year, and this year it's 1.8 trillion, up from 1.3 trillion the last time I looked, and it is just massive. And so we're way beyond, refrigerators telling us that their warranty needs updated. We're now in the area when vehicles can talk to us and tell us when their drivers are doing something crazy. Homes now have been personified with human-like characteristics. And so I think that technology, if we listen to it carefully, if we find the signal within the noise, are gifts to underwriters and to actuaries. And we're in a position to just keep enabling that with the trade of technology and of information that flows through our pipes and many others.
So ordinarily I would try to summarize a little bit, but there was a lot here today. So I'll just step back and sort of get to where I started, which is that I hope the real takeaway here is that innovation is alive and very well in the insurance industry. If you look at the Lemonade stock price or Hippo or whatever, you may get depressed, but there is an awful lot of smart thinking going on. There are an awful lot of opportunities on the business side, and there are some very cool technologies, including generative AI, out there to address that. So with that said, I would just like to thank the three of you. I encourage our viewers to check out the splash screen we'll put up to figure out how to follow you guys and conceivably get in touch if they have a particular problem they'd like to address. Obviously, I also encourage people to follow us at Insurance Thought Leadership and at the International Insurance Society, because we do some smart stuff too. And I'll just look forward to seeing you guys and getting a chance to maybe chat more offline at some point. Thanks again.
Thanks, Paul.